In today's video, I'm going to walk you through how I plan putting this little guy through school or giving him the startup funds for his first business without spending $1 of my money, and how you can do the same thing for your kids. Also, he literally just started holding his bottle today, and it is freaking adorable. So instead of just talking to you hypothetically about what we're looking for, I thought it would make more sense to actually go and drive through some of these neighborhoods, show you what we are looking for and what we're not, explain a little bit of the asset type I'm looking for and the strategy behind that. If I'm also being blunt, we bought a drone, and well, I'm a teenage boy deep down inside and I want an excuse to play with it, and this seems like a good excuse. So let's go check out some neighborhoods. A lot of people think when they're considering this strategy that they're looking for like really nice, newer built, larger kind of houses. And I think one of the important things to keep in mind is this is really kind of like a first time home buyer product that you're looking at. So like entry level, not necessarily something like this stately. I tell a lot of people who haven't really done the whole like owning rental thing before, you're not necessarily looking for like another version of your house. You're looking for something that's going to be a good rental that could also be a good kind of first time home buyer property when you go to refinance or resell the house. Making sure I wasn't a cop. So that kind of a house really isn't what we're looking for. That's going to be too expensive, too nice. It would probably be hard to get a good enough deal on one of those for it to make sense, but you also wouldn't be able to rent it out where it would likely cash flow or even realistically cover all of the expenses. So we're on the highway now, headed to look at something more in line with kind of what you're looking for. So this is a neighborhood that's going to be a little bit closer to what I'm looking for in the house I'm going to be buying for my son. These are typically going to be like your first time home buyer, starter home kind of stuff. I would say realistically, most of these houses are probably going to be anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 square feet. They're ranch, they're on a slab. You know, you can kind of see like older fences and some of that kind of nature. A hurricane did just hit, so there's like some roofs that are tarped and things of that nature. So, you know, normally there wouldn't be tarps on all these roofs and stuff like that, but this is really kind of what we're looking for when we're looking for a home to use for this kind of strategy. The typical real estate market in the US is going to appreciate by like 2 to 3% a year overall historically, but these kinds of first-time home buyer neighborhoods tend to do a lot better than that. We've had a few in Indianapolis that we've done extremely well on. My first rental I bought there actually, we initially paid $90,000 for it, put right at 20 into it, so we were into it for 110, and we sold it earlier this year when it became vacant for $195,000 cash in 3 years. So, you know, you're not gonna make the most amount of money on a property like this. Properties in kind of these, you know, A-, B-class working areas, you're typically going to make $100 to $200 a month in cash flow, so nothing crazy, but keep in mind, cash flow is not the goal. The goal is that somebody else pays the property off for you while you own it. You get all the tax benefits, or your kid gets all the tax benefits of depreciating the asset out over the time you own it. And then when it's time for them to go to school, you can either sell the property and take that lump sum and put them through college, or if they want to start a business, which is something I'm all for with my kid, obviously I'll vet it and make sure it's something legit, or you can simply remortgage the property at that point. So you have a lot of options to pull a lot of money out of something that you can potentially get into with nothing down, or 25 to 30 grand, which is a lot better than trying to personally stash away 150 plus. So while we're here playing with the drone and getting some B-roll footage, the guys behind us were working on repairing a fence line and broke a water main. So that's a bad day at the office. So my name's Ryan Dossey, and the strategy that we're talking about here roughly is the Brrrr method. So what that effectively is purchasing a property at a discount, adding value to it by renovating it, getting it kind of livable, renting the property out, and then going to a bank and having them refinance it in order to pay off your initial purchase. Now, at the start of this video, I mentioned you can do this with none of your own money, and how we do it is with private money. So there's folks that we're paying anywhere from 7 to 9% interest only to fund our purchase and rehab. Now, we've used this method at scale to grow our real estate portfolio. I'll link to a video above that's like a total deep dive on how this thing works. But how we're doing this for my kid is a little bit different in the fact that, well, we're doing it to try to put him through college, not to add it to our portfolio. So this will be the first rental property that I'm gonna buy here in Pensacola. And the reason why we're doing this as opposed to something like the stock market is I prefer to be in control of my investments. I'll do a whole nother video on real estate investing versus the stock market and why I pick real estate. But in a nutshell, with real estate, I can buy something for less than it's worth today, and from day one, it's worth more than what I'm into it for. You really can't like log on to the stock exchange and purchase, Apple for half the going rate, at least not that I'm aware of. So kind of outlining this a little bit, when you're purchasing the home, you're looking to buy it for 75% of what it's worth fixed up, or better from day one. So on a $100,000 house, the most you'd want to spend is 75 grand, but we still have to take into account the rehab. There's a rule in real estate kind of finance called the 75% rule that I've done another deep video on that I'll link to above on that one as well. But effectively, 75% of what the property is worth. We then want to subtract out any repairs that need to go into the property. So let's say, for the sake of conversation, this one needs $15,000. So that's $75,000 property. The most we would want to pay is 60,000 bucks. Now, I personally typically budget for another 5,000 bucks to cover things that may come up in construction, utilities, holding costs, closing costs, that kind of a thing. So realistically, I'm looking to buy a $100,000 property for 55 grand. It's kind of how this works. Now, when it comes to renting it, again, there's kind of rules on how to do this, like the rent to cost ratio. At a minimum, I'm looking at a 1.25%, meaning if the property is worth $100,000, I want at least $1,250 a month in rent. And then how you get either your money back out of this or your private lender's money back out of it is you go to a local bank, and they will do what's known as a cash out refinance based off of the appraised value or what the property's worth, not what you're into it for. So in a perfect execution of this model, I've bought a house for $55,000. I've spent $15,000 in construction. I've spent $5,000 or less on holding costs. So I'm all into the property for 75 grand or better. I go to my bank, they give me a mortgage for $100,000. I pay off my private lender, and I now have a house that I have a mortgage on. The goal then, somebody else is gonna cover the cost of that mortgage to pay the house off where you own it free and clear. So with my kid on this one, well, he's like 6 weeks old. So we've got a pretty good amount of time before he's gonna be going to school. Roughly, what's that, 18 years? So our plan is to use either a 15-year or 20-year mortgage. So while the property's rented out, our resident is going to effectively pay his house off for him. So that way, when he's 18, the property can either be sold or remortgaged to pull out the capital necessary to honestly let him chase his dreams. If that's starting his own business, if that's going to school, whatever it is, but we're setting him up really, really well without potentially having to use any of our money. Now, if you don't have somebody you can borrow money like this from, there's companies called hard money lenders that could potentially help you with this, but they typically charge a lot. So worst case scenario, you can get into properties like this with your bank, typically with about 25% down. So if your options are saving up $100,000 plus in cash, squirreling it away in a bond or savings account or something, or purchasing one property, this is a lot easier and takes a lot less discipline. Worst case scenario, you'd have to do $25,000, $30,000 out of pocket to get something like this done. There's a lot of ways that this potential strategy can go wrong, and it's also kind of tricky to find this good of a deal. That's honestly what we're really good at, though, is finding kind of these off-market opportunities. For the sake of simplicity, I used a $100,000 house in kind of our quick financial breakdown. Realistically, I'm looking to purchase something that right now is probably worth $150,000 or $175,000, but the percentages still scale when you go up like that. So if this is something that you're interested in, I highly recommend liking the video and subscribing to our channel. Feel free to post any of your questions below. It's literally why I'm on YouTube, is to answer them. So happy to be a resource for you in this as you're effectively hacking your way to your kids' college education, one, maybe two properties at a time.